Hi. So I thought, since we're so close to the weekend, I thought I'd give you like a head start. If you still want to Zoom after that, let me know. But I think I may have picked apart the problem because I was just like, I was having the same issue. So just as an example, I've got databases all over. Remember when we were looking at research guides? And I think if we did this in your class. Social work, and we're at social work. We go to PhD and master's help, and then I have a whole list. Let me zoom in. I have a whole list under how to stay current, discipline specific. What I'm about to do should show up in a lot of them, but I think the big one that we want is psych info, because we're talking about comparing, I'm looking at my notes on this screen, comparing CBT and existentialism, which I love that comparison. Be that as it may. I'll go to psych info, but all these should have something on them. So in psych info, I want to show you what I did, and maybe this is what you were experiencing. I'm going to go to advanced search. So if you look for anxiety, there's going to be a ton. If you look for CBT, there's going to be a ton. So I thought, well, maybe there's not a lot on existentialness. So I was just like, okay, I brought it out. So Sartre, existentialist, Camus, existentialist, or existential, and I have the star there in case we have existentialism or existentialist or existential. And I was like, oh, but there's not a lot out there. Oh, was I wrong? There's like 16,000 of them. And I was like, okay, how about the religion one? So I was just devastated. I was like, there's so much has to be about religion, right? So I looked in faith crisis, and then the computer or the database suggested faith transition. I'm like, okay, that seems reasonable. And there was like 5. And I'm like, oh no, and is there going to be like impact or overlap between Sartre and existentialism? Of course there isn't. So picking it apart into chunk by chunk is kind of a systematic way of breaking it down. So I was like, well, what are synonyms? And so I looked in here in the articles, and I found, well, there's faith transition, crisis of faith. Ooh, that's another one. And so a dark night of the soul, Saint Teresa of Avila. There's your trivia for the day. Apostasy was another one. Dark, let's see if I was right. Of the soul, Saint Teresa of Avila. Ding, 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 ding. Why do I know that? I have no idea. I'm a trivia guy, being a librarian. Be that as it may, I tried to find all these synonyms for leaving faith or something like that. And let me drag my notes over. Here they are. Oh, it's not. It's not on the front. I'll email them to you. But I was just like, okay, what if we put all those synonyms in there? So religious identification, deconversion, or renunciation, or apostasy, or leaving religion, blah, 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 blah. So if we expand on the synonyms, and I think faith crisis might be a bit of a bummer, because I think it's kind of like somebody's having a rough go, but they're not necessarily leaving religion. That's something you might have to look at. And how you would do that is you would just take this off. So let's do that. So let's look at all of the words, and all of a sudden there's 900 that we can look at. Okay, that's something we can sink our teeth in. And then, well, let's, just for fun, let's see what, if we take out faith crisis. 926, so if it's like people leaving the faith. Whoa, faith crisis only had 1 article? Isn't that wired? So you experiment. Okay, now let's look at anxiety. How much does that narrow it down? Down to 97. So now we would then, you might have to do, so if we looked up the 2 interventions, existential or CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, I'll put it in quotes so those stick together. if you add all of those, I bet there's going to be nothing left. Yeah. So what you might have to do is say, okay, my population, that's people changing their faith, suffering from anxiety, and you might have to look at existentialism or Sartre or Camus. There's 6. Or, so that one, oh, that's really cool. Temporality, hope, and me. That's really fascinating. Psychedelic assisted therapies. That's how I'm going to go. Just throwing that out there. I've thought about this. Let's do CBT. So there's 6 that has all of those combinations of concepts. CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. Oh, this is the British spelling. So there's 6 for one, and there are none for the other. So what you might have to do is negotiate. What is the issue going on? Is it crisis of faith or is it anxiety? We might have to back away from that. We might have added too many different factors. So if we just look at faith transition, crisis of faith, and all that stuff, and then CBT, then there's 4 in German. So what's going on with this? Ooh, it's a pretty weak 4 too, isn't it? You might have to back away from. Hey, I'm doing that right now. You might have to back away and do a comparison. Is there a comparison between existentialism and CBT? And to be honest, they're a little bit in the same neighborhood. They're kind of like objectivizing issues and like, should I be worried about that? So, do you see where I'm going with that? So you might find out what are the qualities of somebody suffering from a faith crisis. And one of them that I found, this is the term of the day, was religious residue. I love that. Without going too far, I've known a lot of people who've changed faiths and things over time. I'm an older guy, and this happens. And there's so many social constructions of community built around religion that people become, I show up for Christmas and Easter, but I'm not observant, is kind of a common thing. So you can hang on to elements of it and not others, and then the waters get really muddy. So is it fair? Do you have to find an article that has all 3 elements in them? That might be the sticking point. If you're only looking for one thing at a time, you could look at what does it mean to change your faith and have anxiety. You might be able to analyze that and then go in and analyze existentialism and then analyze those other different pieces. And then as your annotated bibliography goes together, it would complete that picture of that main point that you want to have. So if you have to have an assignment that talks about those things directly, it might be that you have to change this or take it out or modify it, and I'm happy to help. But dig around and see if this helps at all. And it's fun to have like a soda or something and just kind of go through these things. And every now and then you might find one where you're like, oh, that's exactly what I was looking for. Then as you save that, look at how they describe the problem, and maybe there's a way of going around in a different fashion, if that makes any sense. Okay, that's enough words. Happy weekend, and let's Zoom if you still want to.